is going on across the country in key states. What should we expect?
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to the Conservative Circus with James T. Harris.
I know I tell you all not to get hooked on the polls, but it's hard to ignore. The polling is quite surprising and has a lot of Democrats in a depression. They're looking at this and they can't believe that Republicans are showing up to vote early. When we get a snapshot of the landscape out there, what we like to do is talk to Jim Pfaff. He's with the Conservative Caucus. He's been in the center ring before. We welcome him back. And Jim, Trump's momentum in the polls, I mean, it looks solid because we see the momentum out here with these different events that he's at, the different rallies that he's doing, the whole McDonald's thing. It seems like the momentum's on his side. What are you seeing?
There is no doubt that October has been a fantastic month for Donald Trump and a horrible one for Kamala Harris. She has been stumbling and fumbling everywhere. It's not that everything is bad for her. She's done a few things that possibly helped her out a little bit. But Donald Trump is just waylaying her when you look at the vibe that's coming out there in the media. But you mentioned the early vote numbers, and particularly there in Arizona, there are a load of Republicans who are finally realizing that you need to bank your vote early because all the rest of the Republicans that aren't going to do that, they're going to show up on Election Day. You don't have Democrats show up in the same numbers. Now, we still have to see how Harris' campaign does their turnout efforts, but looking at these numbers, it's incredibly positive.
You know, the early voting, as you said, it started in key states. Usually Election Day is huge for Republicans. I don't want it to be huge this year. I want early voting to continue until Election Day, and then for the polls on our side to be kind of quiet because everybody would have been out, gone out and voted. If that happens, I mean, you talk about a surprise, and again, the Democrats don't generally go out on that day. Are we really seeing a sea shift in the way we vote in this country?
I think so. I think we're going to learn a lot more after Election Day, and so it's hard to predict precisely. But yeah, I think we're seeing a shift. 2020 was such a momentous year, and so many people, including you and me, I'm sure, were so frustrated with all that happened. I don't think they want to go through that again. And I'm convinced that the voters who show up in presidential election years are like, listen, I'm just going to make sure that this happens. Added to the fact that they do not want to stay on the same economic track in particular, as well as other things that are going on with the Biden administration. They are fed up with the Biden administration. They're fed up with Kamala Harris not having any idea what she's going to do or giving any clear indication of it. And I think the voters are reacting to that. I think there's a bit of a sea shift. We got to build on this once it happens in subsequent election years. But yeah, I think we're seeing the shift happen, and frankly, in my opinion, it's highly positive.
We have Jim Pfaff in the center ring. He's with the Conservative Caucus. You talk about some of the moves that President Trump has made. He hasn't made any bad moves, in my opinion. You just said a moment ago that Kamala Harris has made some good moves or some moves that kind of worked out for her. Can you give us a couple of examples?
Well, I think that what happened was she started to hit the campaign trail, and she did have some positive rallies. Now, by the way, I'm making that statement because those were positive for her. She did get some energy in her campaign with her supporters. What those things did not do is turn the table solidly in her favor. She did have her base energized and ready to go out and do things. She did have some folks show up at her events. But when you look at her pulling off the campaign trail, which is stupid, it's absolutely foolish for her to pull off the campaign trail, and then to do two disastrous media appearances, that interview 2 days ago and then 3 days ago in the town hall event last night with Anderson Cooper. I mean, she looked horrible, and I believe that took the wind out of the sails that she was having at least a little bit of success building up for her in her base.
But Jim Pfaff, the Conservative Caucus, it's producer Aaron, but what about the fact that Trump is Hitler? Doesn't that mean anything? I mean,
listen, I'm going to
Hitler.
tell you something. That you talk about a backfire. That went nowhere. Then last night you had another, like the Clinton campaign used to like to call them, bimbo eruption on Donald Trump. And in fact, many of your listeners probably don't know about this because it popped up, another accusation of Donald Trump groping some woman that totally got shot down because the dates didn't match up again. And so the Harris campaign has moved to this name calling, which calling someone Hitler is worse than name calling. It's the most absurd thing that there is in campaign politics to do. But she's doing the name calling. Oh, and you also had Joe Biden calling Trump a fascist. They're trying to throw a bunch of mud on the situation. But when you're 2 weeks out from an election, you have to make a case for yourself. Donald Trump is out there all this week, constantly on the road. He's going to continue to be on the road. And what is he doing? He's saying, we're going to close the border. We're going to deport criminal illegals. We are going to build the best economy ever, and we're going to rebuild the wall. He's making very concise statements about exactly what he's going to do. And all Kamala Harris can talk about is how horrible she thinks Donald Trump is, and nobody believes her.
Jim, I was right about to ask you what you expected from both campaigns going forward, in less than 2 weeks until the election, but I think you just answered it. We're getting a hard close from Trump. He's talking about what he's going to do. He's basically talking about making America great again, taking us back to what we were experiencing in his first administration, and we're getting nothing but absurd hatred out of the Harris-Walz campaign. I mean, bizarrely twisted accusations.
They are, and they have no foundation. This John Kelly thing, by the way, let's just remember, there is a recording of that, and they thought that was going to be the trigger that convinced everybody that Donald Trump supposedly really said, I want Hitler's generals. But let's keep perspective on this, and this is why these things are falling apart, and Americans are already wise to it. Back in 2020, you had the 51 former intelligence community people signing off on the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop was a Russia disinformation campaign, when that was a total lie. Well, what that shows you is that these people that have gone against Donald Trump, they are committed to destroy him and lie to do it. Everyone knows that that's not true. And in fact, all they got to do is watch him in McDonald's this week. This is one of the worst things about putting that out. At McDonald's, he seemed like a normal guy. He didn't even seem like a billionaire, just someone that liked being around people. And then you got John Kelly saying this. It does not stick because it's just not true.
I absolutely agree with you, and that is why they are failing miserably, Jim Pfaff, with the Conservative Caucus.